Tonight, I am pleased to announce that Amy is going to ask the expert Tracie Hitz about marketing and branding yourself. So, welcome, Tracie. Thanks for joining tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get started with the beginning. I know you graduated from college with a journalism degree and a minor in marketing. So, how did you come up with that idea to do journalism and then lead into what you ended up graduating or doing after graduation?
Yes, so I was in high school and played sports my whole life, and I was like, I'm going to be in sports. And then I got cut from the high school soccer team my freshman year. And I was like, okay, so maybe I won't be part of that. But I just wanted to be part of the team. And so I tried to find another way where I could contribute. And that's when I realized that if I wrote for the yearbook and for the newspaper, that I could still be part of telling their stories and still be part of the gang. And I just always have been a writer. I was writing when I was, just a kid, like writing silly stories and writing about my family. And I really enjoyed writing. And so that kind of was where I went into that path after high school. And then when I got to college, I was like, yeah, I'm obviously going to, be a journalism major, and I was going to write for Sports Illustrated. And that was my dream. And then I graduated and I was trying to get a job, and I was applying for magazines and some newspapers. And again, back in the day, the internet wasn't super, actually wasn't there really. And it was hard to actually find a job anywhere that was farther than, just my little radius of central Illinois. So I ended up applying for a lot of jobs in Chicago and stumbled upon Northwestern University, and it was a marketing job. I didn't exactly know what that was, but it was sports and it was Chicago, and I was excited, and I went in and I applied for it and didn't really know what was going on. But what I found as I was kind of going through the interview, I was like, this marketing is just storytelling and help telling people why they should be coming to these games and why they should care about these student athletes. So I was like, oh, I can do this, I think.
I think that's where let's touch a little bit on marketing and because I think that marketing encompasses a lot. So do you want to give, because you've been in marketing for a long time, the spectrum of marketing?
Yes. I mean, essentially, just it breaks down to being able to say, I have a product, I have a service, I have something I want you to do. And I want you to probably give me some money for it. But being able to tell them, the whys, they always say, the 5 Ps of, your product and price, and why do you need my product? And that's actually the why of your life is really at the core of everything. But in marketing, for sure, is just sharing with people why they need you, how you can help them, and being able to tell them across so many different mediums. And it started with radio and television, and now it's into social media and grassroots and guerrilla marketing and event marketing experiential. And so there's just a lot of different avenues you can go, but at the core is just, again, knowing what your brand is, what your story is, and then what's the best way to tell everybody about that, whether it's personal or professional. If you're an organization that's huge or a small one, it's all just goes back to what's my story and how can I tell people about it.
And if somebody wants to get into marketing and they think that's really what they want to do, what advice or suggestions would you have for them if that's specifically what they're thinking is marketing?
Well, I didn't realize, and I kind of touched on it, but I didn't realize how much my journalism and creative writing was going to come into being able to be a better marketer, because there's a lot of people that have something they want to say, but they don't know exactly how to say it. And so they struggle with, you're making an advertisement or you're making a social media graphic. And if you don't know what the story is, it can be very boring, and then it gets lost. So I would say definitely having a strong writing background and really focusing on that. But then business is huge, understanding, because everyone wants to know what's the ROI. Should I be buying these ads? Should I be doing this? And so the business side is really important as well. But just kind of, understanding some of those skills. Research is a big one, because again, you want to be able to spend the money correctly and efficiently. And that's how your bosses will continue to keep promoting you, because you're doing big things and showing big returns.
Do you find that I see a lot of titles say director of sales and marketing, or they combine sales and marketing? So can you touch a little bit on your feeling of what sales and marketing is like?
Yes, I feel like you said, that it used to be really lumped together. I think people are really starting to take things apart now, because even you'll see now director of social media, director of brand ambassadors, and they're really getting down into those silos, which is good, because sales and marketing is different. Sales a lot of times really is just, going out there, putting on your boots and talking to people and making those sales. But marketing is kind of that bigger plan of how exactly you would do it. So I kind of say marketing is more of that strategy, and that sales is the tactics, when like of actually doing this and actually talking to the people, calling them up on the phone, making that fine, that pitch and really getting it done. But marketing is that bigger strategy, in my opinion.
Well, and let's talk then about, so you did marketing for Northwestern,
Yes.
and then tell us about what happened after Northwestern.
Yeah, so I was at Northwestern for 13 years, got promoted a couple of times, really loved being there, loved Chicago, as you know, and really just loved the student athletes that I was around, because you're really working for these 18-year-old kids. And if they're not good people, it's not that fun. So, but they were so amazing, and they've gone on to do just great things. I mean, like Jason Wright used to sing the national anthem for me, and he is, now the first Black president of the NFL team. And I just remember just him being a kid and helping me out. And so to be able to work at Northwestern was amazing. And those are the stories that we were trying to tell, was it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. These guys are doing it the right way. They're doing it with integrity, and I hope that you'll support them. And that was the story I tried to tell there. And when I left, I really was just looking to kind of help people on a bigger scale. I was very involved in the National Marketing Association for college athletics, and people were so stuck in the day-to-day that they weren't taking that time to put the strategy out there. So they would just try these sales tactics, and I would look at it, I'd be like, wonder why they did that. But they just didn't have time, and they're just kind of, throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I decided that I wanted to work for a company and an agency where I could actually help a lot more schools and do that consulting on a bigger scale. And I chose Old Hat Creative, where I moved to Oklahoma, and that was not as fun as Chicago. But I went there because they also, as a company, were looking to be more strategic. And that intrigued me as well, because they were really well known for design, and they were starting to get known for websites. And then they started doing video animations and they were having all these things, but they weren't marketing it in a way that people really understood that they were a full agency. So that was a second part of wanting to go down there, was just to help them turn into a full creative agency, not just, oh, that design company, or oh, that video company. So then I ended up working with 100 schools and pro teams, and just was able to do strategy. And that is what I love to do, is be really creative and be really strategic.
And then from Old Hat, then you went to?
I went to the NCAA. I worked with the university at Buffalo, was one of my clients at Old Hat. And the woman there is actually a Northwestern alum. And so I'd met her once or twice when she came back for events at Northwestern, but she's super intimidating, like the most amazing woman I've ever met. And I was, a little younger and a little shyer, and I was like, hi. But when I got to Old Hat, again, I was feeling pretty confident. I was doing some great things, and I pitched myself out to her. I was like, I know the company you're using, I can do it better. And she took a chance on me. I worked with her for a couple of years when she was at Buffalo. And then when she went to the NCAA, she called me and said, I need you to come here. She called a couple other people, and I went through the interview process, obviously, but I was like, oh, I didn't know I wanted to leave. I wasn't really sure what my next step was, but I love the underdog. I love people who need a strategy. I love people who don't have a lot of money, because then you just get more creative. So while I went to the NCAA, I was working on the women's basketball staff, and they do not have a lot of money. And in fact, my job was to come in there and cut millions of dollars from the budget and bring in millions of dollars on the revenue side. And so that was really exciting to me, again, to be able to say, okay, you guys do need a different strategy here. You need to tell the story of these student athletes. Again, that's my whole background at Northwestern, was, again, you don't need to know what's going to happen at the game. You just need to know it's going to be awesome. So I totally revamped the way they were promoting the women's Final Four, because again, everyone's like, well, I just want to wait and see who's going to be who's going to be the teams that will be there. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who cares? It's going to be the best basketball you've seen all year. To me, future Olympians, future WNBA players, future CEOs, like, just come to the women's Final Four. No one was waiting for the men's Final Four to find out who was going to play. They just bought the ticket. So we were trying to get to that same point too, and become a bucket list, and just say, just come support these women, because it's going to be the best you've seen. So that was a really exciting challenge. And it was great to be able to have known Anuka before I got there, and to get that call from her was really amazing. And we did some great stuff there that I'm really proud of.
You should be very proud. You really turned it around from where you walked into and what you ended up leaving it with, right?
Yeah, yes.
And so after the NCAA, where'd you go?
So my first women's Final Four was here in Nashville. And again, I love Chicago. Oklahoma was an adjustment. And then Indianapolis was kind of in the middle where there was some cool stuff going on. I was able to get home easily. I could pop up to Chicago to see friends. But being that the Final Four was down here, we go on site visits once a month. And so I came to Nashville once a month. And then I was like, yeah, this is where I'm going to live. So I we came here a lot. My now husband, we would come down here and people would be like, why are you down there so much? Do you want a job there? And a friend of his just said, my friend's hiring. You should definitely apply. And so he applied for the job and he got it. And I was like, oh, because he is born and raised Indianapolis, went to IU. I never thought he would move. And so, and I think things were great at the NCAA. My boss did move on to UNICEF. And I kind of said, I did what I said I was going to go and do there. And so when she left and then Greg got the job, I was like, all right, let's go to Nashville. So I really had always wanted to have my own business. And so I, took my savings and started a business down here in Nashville and did a lot of sports clients still. People, that I built relationships with still wanted me to work with them. So I did that for a little while, but then, everyone down here works in music. I mean, the waiters, the bartenders, your Uber drivers, everybody that works in music. And so I just wanted to be cool and decided to jump in. But there were so many opportunities that I was going out and I was listening to so much music, which is why I love it here. And I would just see these artists out on Broadway playing for tips and not saying their name during their sets, not telling any stories, just playing, not engaging in the crowd. And when they would take the tip jar around, they take it at the end of the session or their set instead of like in between and, asking for tips and, hey, I'll play. If you give me money, I will, play your song. And they just weren't really doing it as well as I thought they could. But again, I can't sing. I can only play right-handed piano. So kudos to them. But I guess kept giving unsolicited advice to complete strangers when I was out listening to them. And they all seemed very appreciative of it. So then I just started, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try and get some music clients. Maybe I can do that. But I didn't have experience. So I decided that I would try to get in an entry-level job in music. So I applied for a few and convinced the people at WSM Radio, which is the Grand Ole Opry radio station, that they should hire me. And it was tough because, like you said, I have 22 years of experience, but it was an entry-level position. So they're kind of like, why does this old lady want this job? Is she going to be here long? Is she going to, feel like she's too good for these entry-level duties and things? And so I was lucky that the GM at the time, was like, took a chance on me and saw that, he wanted to build an events department. And he was like, well, you've put on some pretty big events. I think we'll go ahead and try that out. And so it was really cool to have that opportunity. But from there, I just met a lot of different artists and found kind of a niche and where they needed help. And again, unsolicited advice it started out with, and then now they pay me for it.
That's amazing. There's so many questions I have in there because I want to go back to, when you're leaving Chicago, which was a city that you loved, to go to Oklahoma and to go from Northwestern to this other kind of company. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like, what are you doing? And to each job, why are you doing that? Right? Can you touch on that a little bit and who you listened to and who you didn't?
Yes, for sure. People definitely thought it was crazy because they knew I loved Northwestern. They knew I would love Chicago Beyond, and they just didn't get it. And other people, and this was one of the things that was kind of a turning point on the branding, a personal branding side, was that a lot of people reached out and said, never thought you would leave. I would have offered you a job, or I would have tried to, woo you away if I'd known that was possible. And that's when I realized that I wasn't confiding in people and I wasn't really kind of showing that I had other things that I really wanted to do in my personal board of directors, if you will. And so that was when I realized, wow, the power of social media and the power of a brand can really set you on a path. So, but when I left, a lot of people were like, wow, you're not going to get back. You'll never be able to work on campus again. You're going to be out of touch. You're not going to know what the student athletes are going to do. You're not going to be able to be in it. You're going to miss work in the games and all of these things. And it really came down to what was the core. I was kind of tired of working every single game. I mean, there was in the fall times that we would work 72 days in a row. There was on Thanksgiving weekend, we would work 11 games in 3 days. And so I was kind of like, I've done that for a while. I can go ahead and not do that anymore. And so I knew when I moved to Oklahoma, I would miss the student athletes. I would miss the game day. So the first thing I did was I went over to the University of Oklahoma and I introduced myself. I knew a couple people over there and just said, how can I help? I'd like to volunteer. I want to be part of this. I want to speak to your kids. I want to, be part of any classes that you're doing and things like that. So when you know the parts that you really love about a job, then it's really easy to say, okay, yep, I'm not going to have that anymore, but I can find another way to kind of fill that void. So the reason that these people were saying, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? That's crazy. They didn't understand that I was actually trying to move towards something. And to say that I wasn't going to get back on campus again if I wanted to was also crazy, because I was working with 100 schools and pro teams. Like, I had so many more connections. And that's exactly how, people reach out to me all the time saying, well, hey, would you ever come back to campus? Because now I'm working with the University of Miami. I'm working with South Carolina. I'm working with, UCLA. I'm working with these really amazing schools all on my resume. So people are like, oh, maybe she does know what she's doing because she's doing it in different places. And the people that were saying that were mostly people that were in the industry, and didn't get it. And because they really loved their jobs, and if you're on college athletics, it's like, it's very structured. You're going to go here, here, here. You're going to become an athletic director. And so you're kind of focused on that. And I didn't want to become an athletic director. It seemed like really stressful. And so for me, I was like, but I don't want to do that. But for them, that's the path that they knew. And so like, wow, they didn't understand where I was trying to go. And I will say my family has always been the number one supporters. It didn't even they didn't even flinch. I was like, I'm moving to Oklahoma. They're like, of course you are. Awesome. And I think I was just like, I'm just a positive person. I was like, yeah, I'll go down there. I'll meet a bunch of people. I'll have 100 friends. I did not end up having 100 friends, but it was a good experience, and I met a lot of great people, and it led me to where I am. But yeah, the people that care about you sometimes care about you so much that they're afraid that you're going to fail. But for me, if I did, I'd still be okay. I would have gotten something out of it. But a lot of people don't. That's not the way they think. So
I also think they're also jealous of anybody else's success sometimes, and they don't want you to go higher. They want you to stay where they're at, is what I found too, right?
that's a good point. Yes, that could be part of it.
Also, let's talk a little bit about being working in athletics, because I think it sounds so glamorous, right? You're at the football games, you're at the basketball games, you're surrounded by athletes and all this stuff. But let's talk about the hard parts of it. You mentioned working at Thanksgiving, working probably at Christmas. What other things are a little bit more of a challenge that most people need to look at if they think they want to go into that?
Yes. Well, a lot of long hours and not a lot of money, especially when you're first starting out. So I know people would sit around and try and figure out per hour what they made that week. And I was like, don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's also, I think some of the challenges are that there's so many people involved in the decisions that even when I was running the department, I still had to run everything by everybody. And then again, you could be like, okay, this is our plan. And then all of a sudden someone would be like, nope, we have to do this because of this. And I'm like, that's not in the plan. And it actually doesn't make any sense, but you'd have to figure out how to put it in there anyway, which was one of my favorite things. I think that's why I love challenges so much, because I'm like, okay, you gave me something that makes no sense. I'm going to make it make sense. Mm-hmm. And so, but those are some of the challenges are just that you have to work within all of these parameters, and you're not the only person that has an opinion. And I think one of the things that kind of describes it the best is, and everyone, it's so glamorous, but I was always in charge of playing the music at the games. And so, obviously when the band is playing, I didn't do that, but even just playing the music, I would ask the student athletes, hey, just give me a warm-up CD. And I would get it, and then I would play it. And then other student athletes would come up to me like, I hated that music you were playing. I'm like, it came from the offensive lineman. So you guys need to talk. And so you can never please everyone with music. And that was a really big deal on campus, was the music. And so, but that was very indicative of everything. You're not going to please everyone. We would, like I said, our fans were older at women's basketball, and then you have young families there, and so you're trying to do all of these things and entertain people that are so completely different. And that was one of the biggest challenges of it's great to have the diverse crowd in there, but it's really hard to target in when you're trying to entertain people from 0 to 100.
I think that's with anything too. You're never going to please the whole group, and you have to be okay with that. You have to understand that is part of it. Some people will love it, some people won't. Go with those that love it. Right. Another question, another thing that when I worked for the Olympics in Atlanta, I didn't get to see a lot of the games. you're working for them, but all that fun stuff that you think, oh, I get to see the games and I'm going to watch it, right? Not happening.
No, and that's actually how I would weed out some of my student volunteers and my interns, was by saying, okay, you're in charge of Wildcat Alley, the pregame fan fest. You'll be out there from, 7 a.m. until through halftime, cleaning up and getting everything done. And then they'd be like, but I can't watch the game. I was like, I may actually be watching the game, but I will tell you, I will know the score at the end of it, but that's all I'm going to know, because I will be like running around. So yeah, you don't really get to watch the game.
Yep. All right. So we've covered working in athletics. Let's talk about Nashville and working with musicians. Because I know a lot of people who that's a dream for them too, is to either be a musician or work in Nashville or wherever. Let's talk about what the struggles that musicians go through down there.
Yeah, and it's similar to elite athletes, where they're so competitive, they're so driven. It's something they've been doing their entire life, and it's a really hard thing to succeed in at the highest level. So to be able to be a student athlete at any level is amazing. And I'm so, as you know, like I said, I got cut from my high school soccer team. So I am in awe of that, and the team building that they get to be involved in, and just the experience they get because of that is amazing. And so the same with these musicians, to be able to make it down to Nashville, to be able to have a publishing deal, to play on Broadway, all of those things are heads and shoulders above a lot of other people, but they're trying to get to that next level. And again, some of that goes back to, what is your goal in life? Because if you want to be Luke Bryan, then that's a whole different path, and there's a whole other things that you want to do. But if you just want to make music for a living, then there's ways that you can kind of put together that plan and say, okay, I'm not going to be selling out stadiums, but I'm going to be, the background singer, I'm going to be a session player, or whatever it might be. So just really sitting down to find out what it is that they want to do, and then does it match up what they can actually do, and skill wise. And if there is something they want to do, something that's bigger, being able to say, okay, well, you're not there yet, but if you put in this work, you can go. I think the biggest thing is they don't understand that they're a business, that they're a small business, they're a product. Some people, they just have so much fun doing it that sometimes they forget, well, you got to put in all the work, and you got to have a plan, and you need to generate some revenue. So, and some of that again goes back to that competitiveness and being able to have done this their whole lives, that they don't always take criticism really well, and not a lot of people do. But when you are so in love and you put so much time into a song, and to have someone listen to it for 20 seconds, be like, no, what else you got? Like, to come back from that is really difficult. So I spend a lot of time kind of chatting through their mental state too, because these comments that people don't understand that they're flippantly making is actually going to set them back, for the artist to say, wow, I spent all this time on this song, it's my favorite song of all time, and you didn't like it. And just say, that's one person's opinion. Again, music can't please everybody, but just the things that people say. And so I spend a lot of time, like I said, trying to remind them that they're a business, show them how they can be a business, and then also how can you take that criticism and use it for good. Like I said, when I was working in sports, people would throw ideas at me all the time, and I'd be like, that idea makes it seem like you don't think I had a good idea to begin with. Why are you giving me more ideas? But I didn't see it that way. I was like, okay, you got an idea. Sometimes these are good. Let's figure it out. And so trying to teach people that, roll it off your back, and you just kind of got to move on.
Yeah, you're playing therapist as well as manager, right?
I am.
Yeah. Let's also talk about the book that you wrote and becoming an author. And because I know there might even be some people on here that are thinking about writing a book. Let's talk about that.
Yes. And I was going to say that, all of that goes back to just anything you're doing, and dating the same way. That rejection, one person, you show up, you have a cup of coffee, and they're not interested. They're not holding the conversation. They're, looking around, and just leaving, like, oh, see you later. And then never talk to you again. Like, again, one person's opinion didn't work out, move on, learn from it, and kind of go from there. So I had so many people ask me for how to get a job, and people were then asking me, how do you get all these dates? So I started a blog about like 2010, where I basically compared getting a job to getting a date. And then from there, about 3 years later, I got picked up by the Chicago Tribune's blogging service, where I then just was able to pull that dating portion out and just concentrate on that. So when I started writing for the blog, even more people would be like, say, it's so weird that you're just so positive, because when you read about dating, you usually hear about people saying, oh my God, this guy was such a nerd. Look what he did. And people screenshotting text messages or bad profiles. And that just isn't my thing. I feel like if everyone was nicer, this would just be a whole lot easier. And there's been times that a couple of people that that you may or may not be related to have helped me out, like on always going out on March Madness and being able to say, hey, going up and just chatting with people and making you feel comfortable, but then having that person be like, why are you talking to me? You are ugly and stupid and whatever their face was saying. And I'd be like, okay, cool. And I would go on to the next person. And all of a sudden I just realized I was by myself because no one else wanted, they're like, that's too much. I can't have these people just being so mean to me. And I'm like, whatever, roll off the back. But that's the sales background, because I would call, hey, do you want Northwestern football tickets? No. Mm-hmm. Want them now? No. And so you just kind of get used to that sales mentality that you're not for everyone. And that's good, because there's only supposed to be one person for everyone. So it takes a minute to find them. So I found that I have a different way of kind of going about it. And that's why I wrote the book, was to show people that I'm positive, but I'm very strategic. If we're going to work together, we're going to put a plan together, and I expect you to do the plan. And if you don't do the plan, then don't complain to me about how you didn't have results. So I wanted to write that book so people understood who I was. And that was something I've been wanting to do for a while. And I went to a writing conference. I was like, oh man, why can't I find time to write this book? It's crazy. I have all these notes that I used to take when I would sneak away to the bathroom during the date. And I had, pages and pages of notes. But I went to this conference, and the guy was like, you just need to stop watching TV. I mean, he didn't say it just to me. Everyone was there. I'm like, I don't watch that much TV. And then I was like, you know what, guy? Let's see about that. And yeah, I cut out Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder. And yeah, I wrote every day. I set a deadline. I said, this is how much I have to write if I'm going to get this many words by the end of the year. And I wrote the book in basically 2 months, then proofed it and got it all up on Amazon. I self-published for that book. But it was going to set the goal, because why would I expect to write a book if I wasn't putting the time in? And if you're kind of haphazardly doing it, it's kind of like getting in the car and being like, oh, I think I'm going to go find something to eat. Well, it's going to be way faster to find somewhere to eat if you know where you're going.
Yeah. I was with you on a few of those March Madnesses.
Might have remembered.
Which were a lot of fun. And speaking of which, you weren't setting out a goal to be the #1 bestseller on this book, right? You just mentioned you wanted to kind of be a marketing tool, a business card almost for you. And is your goal then to be a #1 author?
Yes, I've always wanted, to be a best-selling author. I've wanted to walk into a bookstore and see my book. Like, that is definitely a dream of mine. But as we were chatting, like, the story I wanted to tell was to be able to help people. And so to say, hey, if you want to know what I'm like, this is my book. And what I was finding was all of these people would come up to me and say, oh my gosh, my friend needs you. But the friend wasn't coming to me. The friend didn't want to admit that they needed help, or that my plan is like, you have to do things. Like, you're trying. Like I said, it's almost like finding a job. It's a job to find a date. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to seem desperate and say, oh, I have a plan, and every day I'm doing something to get a date. That sounds desperate. That sounds lame. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to write this book. So all these people keep saying, I have someone for you. I could be like, cool. Can you buy them this book? And then maybe we'll chat. But yeah, it was just kind of that I wanted people to know my style. And then I wanted this book to like be something where people at least could read it, or if I run into an editor or publisher or whoever, to say, this is my style, but man, I haven't even told you half of the good stories in there yet. And have those people then say, let's write that book. Let me help you write that book.
Yeah. Sequel number 2. Yeah. And then you get to say, and then I married the guy. So it'll be fun.
No, because I'm a success story. Finally.
Yeah, it works. My book works. Okay. The other question I have for you is, what would you recommend someone who wants to market and brand themselves like you have for the workforce or for their own company? What kind of advice do you give those people to do that?
I always start with asking them what their brand is. And it's usually 3 or 4 pillars. I like 4, but just when someone introduces you at work, or a family member or a friend, whatever, if they say, oh, this is Tracie, she's so funny, she's a marketing guru, and if you ever need anything, she'll be there. That's what I want people to say about me. And so if they're not saying that about me, then I get worried. And I'll give you an example. Like I said, I have 22 years of experience in sports. And then I started doing music about 2 years ago, almost 3 now. And showed up, I was actually presenting at a sports conference like a year ago. And people said, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to be here." And I thought, why would I not be here? I'm an awesome sports marketer. And it's because, and then I looked at my socials and my blogs and I was like, oh, because I really haven't been talking that much about sports because I've been so in with music. So that was my kind of a branding wake up call to say, okay, if you want people to think these things about you, then you need to put those things out into the universe. And that's what people really need to kind of think about is, again, what are people saying about you in person when they introduce you? And then what is your social media saying about you? And that includes LinkedIn too, to say, what do you want people to know? What do you want to be known for? And does what you're putting out there reflect that? So if you want to be known for still being good at sports, you might want to talk about sports sometimes. But like I said, for me, it's really sitting down and with people and saying, what's your brand? And so mine is being positive, being a mentor, being creative, and being strategic. And those are the things that I want people to come to me for. Again, like I can help with other things, but instead of being mediocre at a lot of things, I want to really make sure that those are the messages that come out for me. And those are the things I want to concentrate on. So when someone comes to me and says, hey, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? I really do go back and look at those pillars and say, does this make sense for me to do this?
Mm-hmm. And like you were telling me earlier that when somebody said, oh, she's my manager, you're like, oh yeah, I can be that. And you'll figure out a way to do it because you're strategic in that way. Or,
yeah,
hey, I hear you do websites. Well, I didn't mind, but yeah, I can do yours too, because I'll make it work. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can teach certain things, but you can't teach others. So you can teach me what it means to be a manager. Oh, let me know what are the 9 things you need me to do. But you can't teach, that trust, gaining the trust of the artist. And one of my friends who works at Sony is amazing. And I asked her, I was like, what's your one piece of advice for me right now? And she said, truly love the music that the artist put out and truly love the artist as people. She's like, if you don't have that, she's like, you will be miserable. And so just really being able to care about that person goes not only for yourself, but they feel it. I go out so many times just because I do a lot of video for the websites. But I'm out, filming things all the time. And if I didn't like this music, then that I was going to film, that would be terrible. And so it's really, again, you can teach certain things, but you can't teach people how to care. You can't teach them how to work hard. But you can teach them how to be a manager.
What's a piece of advice that you would give someone who's interested, who listened to us this whole way through because they were interested in either marketing or branding or athletics, being an author, managing country artists? What advice would you give them?
Just in general, I guess my path has always been just, again, not everyone knows why I do things. I don't always know why, but to know, again, what at my core, what do I love to do? And also, what do I not like to do? So those were the things that as I moved along, I was like, well, I don't really like putting the pom-poms out at the games anymore. So I'm going to try and do some more things where I don't have to be at the games. And so strategically moving through. And so I think that always taking that self-evaluation to say, what do I still love? What am I kind of would be great to get rid of if I could? And then just, even if you don't have the exact experience that people are looking for, and this happens actually a lot between men and women, where when I was at the NCAA, we had a long time PA announcer who had been there forever. And she ended up retiring and we had to fill her position. And we really wanted a woman for the women's Final Four. And we put it out and we had like so many men apply. And I reached out to a couple of people that do women's PA for different, sports or different sports for basketball, but for different universities or conferences. And I was like, why didn't you apply? And they're like, well, but I've never done it at that level before. And I was like, well, no one has. This lady's been doing it, I think, since basketball started. So, but all these men were applying and they had only been doing, grade school or high school games. And I thought, why do they think they can do such an elite sporting event? But that's, sometimes just men are like, I can do it. But women are like, wait, I haven't done that yet. So I can't chalk off every box that they want. I'm not going to apply. So for me, that's been the biggest thing is just, I got a job at the Grand Ole Opry radio station with no music experience at all. And you have to find those people that believe in that. And those are the kind of bosses that you want to work for. But my advice is, yeah, if just because you don't check every box doesn't mean that you can't go after whatever it is that you want. I've pivoted so many times
You
on
really
my
have.
career.
Mhm.
But it also has to make sense. There are people, I sat on a panel at Vanderbilt last winter, and they were like, okay, kind of explain what you do. And I did. And the people that booked me at first, they were like, yeah, I was wondering how you were going to tie it all together. Like, but I get it, because it's just branding, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's your brand, it's your company's brand, it's your brand, and it all comes together.
Well, and I like what you said when you were tired of doing the pom poms, like you figured out what do I want to do that will make me happy. And I think that's another piece of it is, you don't have to be stuck in it if you're not digging it.
Exactly. Like I went to Oklahoma. One of the reasons I left Northwestern is like, again, I don't want to work all these events. I miss people's birthdays. I missed weddings. I missed funerals. I missed my mom's brain surgery. Like I was like, this is too much. Like I'm going to miss everything. So when I went down to Oklahoma, I still worked a lot, but I had more free time, especially on the weekends. I wasn't working events, but I was so far from home, and I didn't. Honestly, was a little naive, I guess, because I was like, wait, there aren't direct flights out of Oklahoma to anywhere but Denver. Like, so just even getting home, I had found the time, but now I didn't have the freedom to get there. So that was one of the things I was like, I didn't think that all the way through.
But it still worked out in the very end, right? Yeah.
It did.
Well, I appreciate you spending so much time with me tonight, Tracie. And I hope that someone out there who was thinking about any of these careers really got some good nuggets of advice. So I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me. I love it. I love what you're doing, and I'm excited to be here.
And I look forward to catching up on another one of these, maybe talking about how to get a job, or like really dig into let's do an exercise on branding yourself.
Yeah, that's perfect. Said I don't want to apply for a job ever again. I want my brand to speak for itself.
Yes. Thank you.